Hey guys, we've got a lot to cover today about using the bow in the book. There's a certain spot in the book, which is page 16, that actually starts using the bow in their songs. And if you've been following my videos, you know that I usually go back to the beginning of the book and start with those songs we've already played before when we plucked. And then I use the bow on those songs because it kind of gets out of the way of the hard part of learning new songs. Everybody has already played these songs, we know what they're supposed to sound like, we know the rhythms, makes it a little bit easier. Starting on page 16, they focus on some really important things that we need to know when using the bow. So we're going to start here right on page 16. And if you look at my book, I have the teacher book as usual, so I have all three parts. There's violin and viola are usually grouped together on here. It shows you how to hold the bow, how to stand, where your thumb goes, all that stuff. We've talked about that before in previous videos, but just make sure you review that in your book before you go on any further in the lesson. Of course, always, when you have your bow, and this is a violin bow, when you have your bow, your thumb goes right here on the edge, and this is one of the pictures on the book as well. It doesn't go through the hole in the frog, it goes right on the edge of the frog. It's curved in the back. All your fingers should rest comfortably over the top, and they're all curved. You don't want your fingers straight. You don't want your pinky sticking out weird or anything like that. Everything's nice and relaxed. Everything's nice and curved. And I always have my kids start out holding the bow in their left hand. I actually usually start them on a pencil first because the pencil's easy to hold. But when we start using the bow, start them on the left hand, holding with the left hand in the middle, just so the weight is not on your hand. Because if the weight is on your hand, the bow on this end, the tip end, is kind of heavy. There's a lot to hold up if you're not used to it. So hold it with your left hand, place your thumb, wrap your fingers around the top. Okay? And you can also see violin and viola bows are pretty much the same right here. The cello bow is a little bit different because it sits a little bit differently on the instrument. So the thumb and the finger placement is pretty much the same, but it's a little bit different placement on the instrument. There are two different kinds of bass bows. There's a French style bow and a German style bow. The French bow is what all of my students actually have. I have one German style bow here at the school, but we never use it for anything. So you can kind of, if you're a bass player, you can kind of ignore this German bow picture for now, unless later on you want to try to get into playing German style. But mostly you're going to be using this French style right over here, French bow hold. And that's pretty much the same as the other bow holds for violin, viola, and cello. Alright, so on page 16, number 47 right here, there are a few things that I want to mention before we go on that we have not seen yet in the book. Of course, we have our key signature here at the beginning, which we have seen before, but it's brand new. We've only seen it for one lesson. It was in my previous video lesson if you go back and watch that one. And that tells us that anytime we have a C or an F in the entire song, it's going to actually be C sharp and F sharp, because that's where our two sharp pictures are on the music staff in the key signature. Okay? So we're in the key of D, which means we're going to be using the scale of D, which makes sense because we're going to start in the D string. We're only going to use one note in this song. It's a pretty easy song note-wise, but that's not really what it's about. This song is more about making sure that you get your bow pulled directly across the string straight, making sure you understand the bow markings, which I'll talk about in just a second, making sure you have the rest, making sure you can use the entire bow. All these things are things to think about while you use the bow that you kind of don't have to think about. It kind of just becomes part of your vocabulary as you become a more seasoned string instrument musician. So, the bow directions. First of all, arco means with the bow. So earlier we had P-I-Z-Z, which is pizzicato, which means we're going to pluck with our fingers. Arco means to use the bow. Occasionally, as you get further in more advanced music, you'll have times when you might have pizzicato in one part, arco in another part, and might switch back and forth a little bit. So it's important to know what that word means. Arco means with the bow. The pictures right here above the notes, I'll point a little bit closer so you can see. There are two pictures. There's what looks kind of like a staple and what looks like a V. And if you think about your bow, your actual physical bow itself, this is kind of what these pictures represent. So this first picture right here is a down bow. It tells you that we're going to start at the frog and work our way this way to the right. We're going to pull the bow to the right. And you can tell that because if you look at this picture, it looks like a little staple. Think of that as the end of your frog. It looks kind of the same as the square end of your frog. Okay, even if you have a little rounded edge right here, it's still more or less square on the edge of your frog. Okay, so this is the down bow side. You're going to start on that side and pull to the right. The other end looks like a V right here. That's for an up bow, and that looks like the tip of your bow. So the tip of your bow right here looks like a V. It's upside down right now compared to how we're seeing it, but it's a V, and that's an up bow. So we would start here at the tip, and we would bow to the left. Okay, so arco means with the bow. The staple picture, it looks kind of like this. It means we're going to start on the frog, which is what the staple picture kind of represents, and we're going to pull to the right. The other picture, it looks like a V, means up bow. We're going to start on the tip end, the pointy end, and we're going to bow to the left. And generally, you're almost always going to start on a down bow if the note starts on the beat, right on the beat instead of before or after the beat. There are some times when you won't, but usually it'll be marked if you don't. As a general rule, you want to start on a down bow, and we're going to alternate bowings unless it tells us something otherwise. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We're not going to worry about counting or clapping these rhythms for this first song, number 47. Usually I would go through all that, but these are really simple rhythms, and the focus is not on the notes and rhythms. The focus is more on making sure you understand the symbols and the way the bow moves. So we're going to just go ahead and skip straight to playing it. It's all in the open D string. Now, the only thing I will say before we start is two things, actually. First, check your bow hold. Make sure your bow hold stays like this. Sometimes people have a tendency to kind of crush things down. You end up like this, or you end up like that. You want to make sure your bow hold stays good. You also want to make sure as you play, your bow stays parallel to the bridge, which is hard to see upside down in this video. It's like this. So here's the bridge right here. You want your bow to be just about in the middle between the end of the fingerboard and the bridge, and you want it to stay parallel to those two lines. If it gets diagonal or sideways, you get some weird screeching sounds or crunchy kind of sounds, and those are not good sounds. So let's start number 47. Find your D string, your open D string. Start down with the frog on the bottom because we're going to do a down bow first, which is again what that picture of the staple looking thing is. So we're going to start with a down bow and try to use your entire bow. We're going to do a slow tempo so you have time to use your whole bow. Okay, 1, 2, ready, go. Rest. Now freeze your bow, rest, 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 down bow again. Rest, 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 rest. 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 Alright, so you can see there's most of the time you're going to start on a down bow on the beginning of the measure because we have an even number of rests in between, even number of beats, so it works out that way. But a few times, like here and here, these two measures, 5 and 6, we're going to start on the down bow on the first measure, up bow on the second measure. We have an odd number of beat, 1 in between, 1 beat of rest. So that means we're going to have to, to keep alternating our bow directions, we're going to have to start on the opposite bow. So down, rest, and since we're already down, the next direction has to be up. So up, down, up. Okay? Pause the video before you go on. Go back and practice that one again. I'm not going to do it again with you because it's pretty easy. If you feel like you're getting the correct notes, so you're only playing the D string, you're not doing like doing something like that and getting other strings, so you can go on. Number 48 is the same exact exercise, except it's on the A string. So it's in the same key signature, 2 sharps, key of D. We have the same pattern of downs and up bows. We have the same pattern of notes and rest. Everything's the same. We're just on the A string. So let's go ahead and play that. Find your A string. And by the way, I always tell my students, there are things called string heights, or bow heights. Some might call them bow heights. I think of the string heights or the bow heights as being floors on an elevator. So for each string, we've talked about this before when we first started using the bow. For each string, your right hand needs to be at a different height in order to hit that one string by itself. Otherwise, you'll hit other strings. So for my G string, for example, my bow hand is almost pretty much straight across the instrument. It's a little bit tilted, but it's more or less straight. Okay? If I want to hit the D string, I can't use that same height with my right hand. It has to move down like this. So I would call that a different floor. Go down a floor on the elevator. That's how I describe it to my students. So you have G, go down a floor to D, and then that D has its own floor. So only the notes on the D string are on that floor. And then A string is down another one, and then E string is down another. So you have 4 distinct bow heights that you need to use. So we're not going to go in between them on this particular song. We'll do that in a second. But for number 48, think about that as you play number 48 on the A string. This is the floor that only the A string lives on. No other floors, no other strings live on this floor. Okay, so keep it really steady. Keep your wrist, let your wrist bend a little bit as your bow goes out. That way your hand can stay on the same string. So number 48. Okay, starting on down bow. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, 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 down bow. Rest, 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 down bow again. Rest, now up bow. Rest, down bow. Rest, rest. Next one. This is number 49 on page 17. You can see there's also some notes on string levels that I was talking about a minute ago, or different floors on the elevator. Read through all that, make sure you understand, but basically, as you move across your instrument, if you're on an instrument that goes on your shoulder, violin or viola, as you go to a lower string, or a lower pitch string I should say, your bow has to go up. As you go to a higher pitch string, your bow has to go down, which I know sounds kind of backwards, but it makes more sense the more you do it. So read through these yellow boxes right here. Cello and bass works the same way, except you're vertical instead of horizontal. So you still have to adjust for each string and each string height, each string level. Okay, number 49. We're going to do the same exact thing we just now did. A little bit different rhythm, but we're not going to take the time to clap through it because we can play this rhythm by now. Still in the key of D, still downs and up bows. This time we're going to change between A and D, open strings A and D. So in between these, it tells you to raise your arm or lower your arm. So you got to change your level in between each one of these notes. It gives you a hint on which way to go, which direction to go. Also, you might have a repeat sign in measure 4 instead of having, on my book, it goes like all the way across, but this is a teacher book, so it's a little bit written a little bit differently. You might just have the same 4 measures repeated. So if it looks different, just keep on going on mine or play along with yours. Okay, 49. Starting on the A string. 1, 2, ready, down bow. Rest. Go ahead and change your level and D string, down bow. Rest. Rest. Go ahead and change your level again. Ready, down bow, A. Rest. Change your level. Rest. 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 Down bow D. Rest. 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 Good. Number 50. Same idea. We just have 2 notes now instead of 4. Okay, let's just play through it. Number 50. Starting on A. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, change your level. Rest, D. Rest, rest, A. Rest, rest, D. Rest, rest. Now you may notice I haven't been mentioning that we're starting on a down bow, but like I said earlier, we almost always start on the down bow, but it's a note at the beginning of the measure. So all these notes are at the beginning of the measure, they're all on down bows. Next, 51. This is similar to what we did earlier. We're just using 3 bows instead of 2 or 4, like we did earlier. So we're going to have, since we have an odd number of bows and an odd number of rests in between the bows, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have down, and the next measure starts on up. So instead of every measure starting on a down bow, the first measure starts on a down bow, but it changes each measure down, up, down, up. So this is one of those exceptions I mentioned earlier, that we don't always start on a down bow. From the beginning, number 51 on the A string. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest, change your level, D. Rest, A. Rest, D. Rest. Okay? You might want to pause the video and practice that one again if you have trouble switching between down bows and up bows at the beginning of the measure. I'm going to go on for now, but make sure you take time to practice that if you need to. The next thing you need to know is the bow lift. This is one of the things I mentioned in the last video and earlier, I think in this video, about things that we are learning for the bow that we have not talked about yet and we haven't been able to do because we just didn't know about them yet. So number 52, before number 52, there's a yellow box that says bow lift. It looks like a little comma or apostrophe. And if you see this down here at the end, toward the end of number 52, that bow lift right there goes above the measure. If you're familiar with wind music, like band music, this is called a breath mark, or choral music is called a breath mark. And really it kind of has the same concept. So in wind music, if you're playing an instrument with air, you have to blow through it. If you're a singer, you have to use your air to sing. You have to have some kind of space to take a breath. It's a brief pause to kind of reset your air. Same kind of idea for us, except instead of using our air, we're using our bow. So when we see a bow lift, it's our opportunity to lift our bow and reset it back to the frog to start our down bow. So for example, if I were going to play this last measure, I would play a D. I would say D, and then I would end up at the end of that note at the tip instead of the frog. And there's a repeat sign here at the end of this piece in number 52. So if I was going to start here and I was going to freeze my bow during the rest like normal, I would already be at the frog, or at the tip, because of the end of that D on beat 1. So when I tried to go back to the beginning, I couldn't do a down bow because I'd only have this much bow left. So that rest, or that lift, you're here at the tip, that lift lets you start like that, back at the frog, so that when you get back to the beginning of the piece and the repeat, you can start with a good solid down bow. Okay? So, the motion for a lift is not a big motion. It's not this. Anything weird or crazy like that. It's just a quick, fast motion to get you back to the beginning. So if you're at the tip, just like this, the bow lift would probably look something like this. It's just a fast motion. You lift the bow off the string so it doesn't make any sound. Lift it off the string, move it back up like a little J motion, maybe you can think of it that way. Lift it up and reset it. And when you reset it, you don't want it to go and make any weird noise. You just want to set it down on the string, get ready to play again. So the whole process of lifting the bow should be pretty much silent. So you finish the note, that's at the end of the note, and lift the bow, reset it, you're ready for the next note. Okay, and that happens pretty quick. We have 3 beats here in this song, but usually we don't have that many beats. Usually it's a shorter amount of time. So let's try it. Number 52, it does have a repeat, so we will repeat it. When we get to the bow lift at the tip, try to make a fast motion that doesn't make any sound when you land back on the string. Okay, from the beginning, number 52. 1, 2, nice and slow. Ready, go. Down. Now change your bow. Change your level. Down. Change your level. Lift. 3, repeat, and. Rest. Now the second time it's not necessary really to do the bow lift because we're not going to play anymore at the end of the piece, but you can if you just want to practice that way. So pause the video, speaking of practice, go through this one a couple more times on your own, make sure you get that bow lift down. It's really, really important. There were a few songs earlier in the book that we used the bow for that they hadn't told us about the bow lift yet, and we didn't do the bow lift, so we ended up alternating all the way through. It would have been easier with the bow lift. So it's a really important thing to know, and it'll really help you a lot as you get into more difficult music. But for now, we're going to go on to number 53. This is the Essential Elements quiz. Still in the same key, by the way. And make sure, I didn't mention it before we tried number 52, but the same concept is in both of these songs. On number 53, you have to change your bow height, change your elevator floor really fast between notes. We don't have rest like in 51 to take time to change our bow heights. So in 53, just like 52, make sure you change heights quickly between notes. Back and forth between the D string and A string. Okay? 53. There's no bow lift in this one because there's no repeat, so we just end it on that D. Keep your instrument up and your hands up at the end of the song, even though there's 3 beats of rest, because the song itself is not really over. Rest is still music. Okay? 53. 1, 2, beginning, go. Rest. If that was too fast for you, if you're having trouble switching back and forth, pause the video, slow it way down, just take your time. Even add a rest in there, kind of make up your own song a little bit. Play the first couple notes, add a little bit of a rest change. Play the next few notes, add a little bit of a rest change back. And then speed it up to the regular tempo if you need to. You can always practice like that. Anytime you have trouble with something, just slow it down, add some space in there if you need to, and then take the space out gradually as you get a little bit better at it, a little bit better at what you're doing. That's as far as we're going to go today. The next couple lessons start using fingers with the bow, which we've already done in other songs, but I want to stop here for right now. That's enough to work on with just making sure you get your bow even, making sure you get your speed, make sure you get using the entire bow, and most importantly, make sure you get the different levels of your bow, your different elevator floors with your bow, so that you only hit one string at a time. As always, if you have any questions or anything, send me a message, give me a comment, let me know. I will gladly help you, and I will see you next time.